I'm sorry, what? Sokka said, crossing his arms as he looked closer at Korra. At this point, they had been walking on the path to the Earth Kingdom of Omashu for over an hour. The place where Aang was certain he could find him and Korra an earthbending teacher. According to Aang, they should have gotten there any minute now. You're telling me that while we were fighting for our lives, Kyoshi dragged you on an Avatar field trip? Korra sighed in response. Look, I hate it too. I wasn't a willing participant, you know. But she did share some pretty important stuff with me, Korra replied. Oh yeah, of course. How could I possibly forget the earthbending teacher that we're supposed to help you find? Or the guy who can apparently turn the war around who doesn't even have bending powers. That should be incredibly easy to stumble into. That's why we're following Aang's advice, Korra argued. We're apparently supposed to run into these people soon, right? Well, a major city in the Earth Kingdom seems as good a place as any to find an earthbender, doesn't it? Well, if we're gonna stumble into them soon, it might as well be today, right? Aang said proudly. If she's supposed to be our earthbending teacher, then I'm sure she'll be on Omashu. Speaking of, Aang said as they ascended to the top of the mountain. The others looked over the edge, seeing a large, beautiful metropolis surrounded by walls below them. Wow, it's just as pretty as I remember, Korra said, looking down at it. During her time in the Earth Kingdom, she had, of course, seen Omashu, at least in passing, as a child. But she had never gotten quite as good a look at it as this. It was pretty. Really pretty, as a matter of fact. Yeah, same here, Aang replied. You should have seen it 100 years ago. This place was incredible. It still is, but man, I explored every inch of this place with my friend Bumi, Aang said wistfully, his mind caught up in a sea of memories. Bumi? Katara asked. That's kind of a strange name. Well, he was kind of a strange kid, Aang replied. We both were, I guess. Man, we saw the coolest stuff together. He even showed me some neat tricks that hopefully I'll be able to show you guys. Aang smiled as he spoke, looking below, although the tone in Katara's voice made her think a bit that she might have not wanted to see these tricks. The last time Aang sounded like this, he tried to talk them into riding a giant koi fish, which, of course, meant that they were around when Zuko attacked. Okay, sure, Katara replied, trying to allow Aang the leeway to walk into a place that he loved so much when he was younger. She figured he needed a break. It wasn't like they got many of those lately. But we probably shouldn't just walk right into Omashu, right? We fought more than enough people at this point for people to not know what the avatars in our group look like. There's no way they aren't wanted somewhere, and... While she was talking, Aang reached into his bag, pulling out what appeared to be a giant pile of Appa's fur. In a spinning blur, Aang whirled around himself like a tornado, stopping, dead, with a head of pure white hair atop his head, supporting himself with his staff, like a cane. Ta-da! He shouted, a grit in his voice present, one designed to show his fake age. What do you think? I guess technically you look your age, Korra replied. Aang held a bundle of fur up to Korra, who stared at it. She was one of the avatars, so it wasn't like she could have gone in undisguised. She felt her eye twitch. Fine, she said, defeat evident in her voice as she grabbed the fur tufts. By the time they got to the front line of the bridge in Omashu, the girl had thought she looked ridiculous. She had a large white mane attached to her head, something that to her looked more like a clown outfit than a convincing guise. To try and make it better, she tried to adopt the hunch that Aang was forming, to show her quote-unquote age. Her hunch didn't look nearly as convincing. If anything, she was just slightly slouched over. Halt. What business do you have in Omashu? An Earth Kingdom soldier stopped them. Business? Why, back in my day, people would have respected their elders enough to not ask such a thing. My business is my business, Aang shouted, waving his cane around. Korra had to suppress a snicker in the back of her throat. She had to admit, Aang was definitely doing a good impression of every cranky old person she had ever met in her life. My name is Bonzu. Bonzu Pippinpaddle Opsicopolis. You better remember that name or... Sorry, Korra cut in. He can get a bit cranky when he's kept out for too long. If you would please allow us and our grandkids to get through quickly, Korra added on, her voice already straining from the old woman tone she was putting on. These old bones can't run from the Fire Nation forever, you know, she offered. The man in front of her nodded curtly. Fine, I suppose there's no harm. I'll allow you in. But I should warn you, if you're here to escape from the Fire Nation, you might want to go elsewhere. Things have been a bit rougher than usual in that department recently, he said, the gates already opening behind him. To the clear confusion of the soldier in front of them, none of the group made motions to go inside. Rather, Katara was the sole person to walk forward, meeting the man eye to eye. She put a smile on her face, the kindest one she could muster, even if her heart was pounding in her chest. Oh, really? Well, if you wouldn't mind, I'd really like you to explain if you could. We do have our grandparents with us. The last thing we want is to get them into any danger. Well, it would be more accurate to say there was danger. It should be safer now. We added more people on patrol after the incident. But if you're still worried about it, like I said... No, it's just I think a bit more information would put my mind at ease. Katara preemptively cut him off. The man before her nodded. The guy before her tried his best to give a disarming smile. The Fire Nation was here about a day or two ago. One of them was asking about the Avatars. One of them, anyway. Zuko. Sokka hissed quietly. Katara jabbed at him to get him to shut up. Was it a young man? Was it a young man? Katara asked quietly. I believe I saw a Fire Nation troop led by such an individual and... The man before her cut her off. It was a young woman, actually. Thankfully, there were only 2 of the Fire Nation around this time. The king ordered us to let him poke around. He apparently didn't want to start any trouble. They started shoving posters in everybody's face. The guard grimaced, as though remembering that particular moment made him sick. And to make matters worse, they actually got into a scuffle with one of the Avatars. What? Both Aang and Korra dropped their fake voices. It took them a moment to pick them back up. The shock that moved through their bodies began drifting away as they had a silent conversation with their eyes, both of them practically screaming at each other internally, to ask more questions. Korra was the one to take initiative. Are you sure it was the Avatar? There are a lot of people out here who can claim that kind of thing, and... Korra began. Trust me, ma'am, I was quite sure. I had to clean up the aftermath that rumbled out of their little scuffle. Not to mention the fact that his bending was nothing like I've ever seen before. It was way too different to be a normal person. The soldier replied. Plus, the girl was handing out flyers of what the Avatar looked like, and, well, the guy was pretty much a dead ringer. Him and that earthbender who came through here really tore the place apart. My guess is the Fire Nation's been going at them pretty hard for... Korra soon tuned the man out. Earthbender. He was traveling with an earthbender. Her eyes shot wide open. A person with power on the level of the Avatars traveling with an earthbender. That sounded like what Kyoshi showed her. Her earthbending teacher. Her future earthbending teacher, if she could convince her. Apparently they were both being hunted by the Fire Nation just like they were. They already had so much in common. She half smiled at the thought. These posters, you don't happen to still have one, do you? Korra asked. The soldier tilted his head. Well, he's technically not in the city anymore, and... Well, Sokka jumped in. It would just make our family feel much more comfortable. And you want us to feel comfortable, don't you? Omashu is one of the greatest cities in the world, right? How would it reflect on you if your people weren't feeling safe? Sokka said, tapping against the man's chest with every word. Korra watched him. He certainly did have a knack for being persuasive, if not incredibly persistent. Well, I certainly wouldn't want a reputation to take a hit, the man pondered to himself. Very well, I believe I still have something. He rifled through his bag and pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper. Korra snatched the paper from the man's hands, her wig nearly falling off with her rapid movement as she took a quick look at it. It was a drawing that looked very familiar. Everything from the bangs atop his head to the ponytail that spun around his back gave her no doubt in her mind that this was the same person in her vision, which meant he was real, and so was her earthbending teacher, the people who supposedly had the power to turn everything around. And that meant she could find them. She could find... Ed! Toph shouted, slamming her foot on the ground to break down the wall of Ed's makeshift tent that he had transmuted the night before. Ed tumbled his way out. I'm awake, he replied bitterly. She kicked down on the ground, a pillar kicking out from under him, launching him right before her. He barely had time to land on his feet. Now you are, she replied. The girl reached down, helping him to his feet. You're the one who said we needed to keep moving to keep ahead of all the crazy people after us. I've gotten into 2 giant fights in barely 3 days. Can you just give me a little bit of time? Sleep's been annoyingly rare for me lately. Ed dusted himself off. I didn't have this much of a crazy schedule as a state alchemist. Again with that state alchemist thing. You're really gonna have to explain what that is at some point, Toph said plainly. There's really not much to explain. Alchemists employed by the state. Soldiers who don't really have to be on the battlefield until they do. Human weapons, dogs of the military, bunch of different names really. Ed looked around. There weren't any signs of anybody walking near their area at night, so they probably weren't being watched. They should be safe, at least for the time being, he reasoned. He sighed, pulling on his coat as he silently got ready for another day stranded in Wonderland. I'm sorry, you volunteered to be something called a human weapon? Toph asked. It's a long story, Ed replied. From what Toph felt coming off of him, he was definitely telling the truth about it being a long story. and judging from the way his heartbeat picked up, a pretty uncomfortable one. It doesn't look like there's a city nearby, outside of the one we just ran from, so it looks like buying supplies is out. We should still fuel up, at least find some food for the day, and try to get some kind of travel method. I can go fishing, I guess. Fishing? That's lame. We should be nearby a road. Maybe we can scam some people out of their stuff, Toph offered. Ed paused. I don't know about. Only the people who deserve it, Toph clarified. This seemed to take the hesitation out of Ed's thoughts. They were pretty close to Omashu still, which was apparently a pretty major city, and if Ed knew anything, it was that there was always at least one shady person looking to make a buck around places that popular. He had seen that on more than a few occasions. Fine, but we can't make any scenes. The lady following us is like a dog with a bone. Dog? Toph asked. I just mentioned dogs 5 seconds ago. Dog of the military, remember? Does your world have no normal animals? Hey, from my perspective, your world is the weird one. Says the girl trained by badger moles, Ed replied. Yeah, so? What's weird about that? Outside of the fact that they can apparently move dirt with their minds, those are two different animals, Ed replied. Toph found herself snickering. She picked out the pattern from what Ed described of his homeworld a while ago. Animals that were just one thing over there seemed to be combined with another one here. It was weird, sure, but she never got tired of messing with him about it. I don't know how, but somehow you're worse than Winry, Ed said, remembering the one other person who could get under his skin this much. Well, based on what you told me about your mechanic, I'll take that as a compliment. Now come on, Full Metal. She grabbed Ed's hand, pulling him towards the populated road on a nearby mountain. She was already formulating 1,000 different methods of scamming in her mind, and different ways that she might be able to use his alchemy to boost her ability to scam suckers. She didn't need any help, of course, but, like fighting, she decided that having somebody who could keep up with her might be a nice change of pace. You have got to be kidding me, Mai said, staring down at the two walking away from their campground. She was going to have to follow them, again, and this time she was going to have to do it alone, which meant if she got caught, she was going to get destroyed by them. Dang it, Azula, she whispered to herself. It was only a short while ago that she had gotten this responsibility handed down to her from Azula. 2 days by her recollection, after Azula had gotten buried alive by the blonde bender. Ty Lee's little circus troupe is in the Earth Kingdom right now, aren't they? She asked. Mai should have lied. She knew that. She should have just said no. Sure, they probably needed the help if they were going to keep slamming themselves against this particular brick wall, but it didn't change the fact that Azula leaving her here to make sure they didn't lose the Avatar's trail was one of the most irritating things the girl had done to her recently. She was stuck here, having to make sure she didn't lose track of them, while also trying to make sure that they didn't know she was following them, something that seemed especially difficult, considering that one of them could feel the entire ground beneath her feet, which meant Mai had to hide in the trees above. This is so stupid, Mai muttered to herself. They were heading towards the roads. She would have to keep following them from the trees, making sure to not make enough noise to draw their attention. She felt her mouth go dry at the prospect. Mai wasn't the kind of person to get nervous, but at this point, they had lost twice to these two. Granted, losing was the other team running away, but still, that was with Azula at her side. Mai might have had her issues with Azula, but she was one of the most powerful firebenders she had ever seen, and they fought her twice and beat her. So if Mai was on her own, things were going to go even worse. She could basically guarantee it, and she wasn't in the mood to be buried in the dirt right now like Azula was. You heard them! This is just like my vision, exactly like it, Korra shouted, having dropped her old woman disguise as soon as she got in the city. They were standing near a place that was in the process of being repaired, specifically the place where the Avatar had apparently had a showdown with the Fire Nation. She held the picture up. This is the guy. We found him already. I don't know about that, Sokka said. I'd hardly say we found him. He's not even here. Didn't they say the Avatar busted out of the city? Also, why would this guy be claiming to be the Avatar? Isn't that a little suspicious? Sokka said, snatching the paper from her. Apparently he had the powers to back it up. Look at this place, it's wrecked. Isn't that at least worth looking into? A little bit? Korra asked. She does have a point, Sokka, Katara cut in. We need all the allies we can get in this war. If not only a good earthbending teacher, but a guy with enough power to be mistaken for the Avatar are around, we probably need to get them on our side. At least try to. They're being chased by the Fire Nation. We already have our fill of being chased by the Fire Nation. All the time, as a matter of fact. We just got away from them like 2 days ago. Sokka's eye twitched. And what, you want to go chase them down? Doesn't that seem like a bad idea? I think it seems like a bad idea. Come on, back me up, Aang. He turned to the shorter avatar, who seemed to be pondering. Aang looked up, his old man disguise now long gone as well. I still think we should find an earthbending teacher in Omashu, but if you're getting guidance from Kyoshi, I don't think we should look past that. We're already flying blind enough as it is, he said, though the look in his eyes showed that he was definitely disappointed. He clearly didn't want to leave the city so soon after entering it. Korra took in the boy's expression. He clearly wanted to have some fun, and she didn't want to take that from him. It had been a very stressful couple of days after all. The last time Aang had fun, the Fire Nation burned a village down. How about this? Korra offered. I got the vision, so I'll go chase it. I'll follow their tracks. If I'm able to find them, then I'll try my best to talk them into coming to meet the rest of you. Meanwhile, Aang can stay here and look for an earthbending teacher his way. Does that sound fair? Aang immediately nodded. Sokka turned to Katara, a look of disbelief on his face. We get attacked all the time and you want us to split up? Well, there are two avatars. Sometimes it's useful to have them do two different things, right? She offered. Sokka raised a hand in half objection, but soon lowered it, not being able to see a flaw in that logic. There we go. Problem solved. Problem not solved. Absolutely not. Sokka pointed a finger in the girl's face, but she forcefully pushed it down. Fine, you can go trace your little ghost, but, Sokka pondered, you are not going by yourself. He said to Korra. We can't split up that much. You already got captured by the Fire Nation once. In fact, both of you did. He pointed at the dual avatars. Gee, thanks for throwing that in my face, Korra replied. I'm just saying it's not a bad idea to have backup, so one of us has to go with you. Sokka looked between the both of them. In his mind, he was trying to sort their strengths and weaknesses, seeing who was best for what job. Well, one of us should go with each of you, so... How about this? Katara, you go with Korra. Your waterbending skills should be pretty useful down there. And I'll stay with Aang to make sure nothing bad happens on this end. My skills are more suited for this, after all. Wow, look at you thinking ahead, Katara said with a smirk on her face. I think ahead? I was just saying this is an entire city full of Earth, so a waterbender's not really going to be useful here. Oh, I'm not going to be useful? And what are you going to do exactly? Hello? Boomerang. He lifted his boomerang up, shoving it in her face. Katara sighed deeply. She shook her head at her brother's ridiculousness as she nodded. Fine. Problem solved, I guess. The two of them nodded at each other, as Korra used her rough earthbending skills to create a pathway for them outside of the city. The path she created followed exactly where people said the Avatar had apparently fled to. Meanwhile, Aang grabbed Sokka's hand, dragging the boy away into a different corner of the city. Come on, if I'm gonna take you on a tour of the city, I want to show you the coolest thing I used to do with Boomy. To say that Ed and Toph were an excellent scamming team was to put it lightly. Extremely underselling it. Ed had a lot of experience with spotting scumbags from his time as a state alchemist. He knew exactly which people were the ones trying to take advantage of others. The kind of people to try and scam the innocent out of a quick buck, or extort them out of everything they were worth. It was honestly pretty easy to see. It was all in the face. Those kinds of idiots were always so proud of themselves they couldn't help looking absolutely thrilled at times. The plays they ran were efficient, to say the least. Most of the time, they would stop on the side of the road and pretend to be lost. They would ask for supplies from travelers nearby or for advice. And whenever somebody would try to fleece them out of their stuff, do something like saying, oh, well, I can give you a ride if you give me X, Y, and Z in exchange. X, Y, and Z usually being all of their possessions. Ed and Toph would watch very closely. During those times, they would look for any signs in the person that said that they were trying to fleece them out of all of their stuff and leave them stranded on the side of the road. And that would be when they would strike. Sometimes Toph would go through at the transaction, while Ed was in the back, using his alchemy to open up a pathway in the back of the carriages and take stuff right from under their noses. Sometimes the two of them would challenge their would-be scammers into a game, where if they won, they would get a prize. They knew their scammers would usually try to cheat them. But since most game pieces in this world were apparently made of stone, Toph was able to rig that pretty easily. Ed even got to pull an old favorite trick, one of the simplest tricks he knew about, and one that was technically illegal, at least back where he came from. He would use his alchemy to turn the stone around him into false gold and false silver. He would use those to make transactions. The gold would simply turn back to normal afterwards. It was the same trick he used a while ago, on that person trying to scam an entire town out of their time and money. He smiled at the thought. Compared to now, those are pretty good times. He had now really pulled the wool over that guy's eyes. Ow, Ed thought to himself. Just you wait, brother. I'm on my way back to you, Ed promised in his mind. By the time the two of them had spent a few hours on the road, They had also used some of the money that they already had to buy goods from reputable travelers. At this point, they had so much on them that Ed began to think he might have overdone it a little. He doubted they would be able to carry all their goods back to their old campsite, let alone to another city. You know, Full Metal, you have officially graduated to my favorite person. That was the most fun I've had in years, and I count my Earth Rumble tournaments in that, she said, hauling the last of their giant crates down the mountain. You're not too bad yourself. Most people wouldn't have been able to keep up with me, Ed replied. It's even easier than the last time I did this. Last time? Toph asked. Nothing major. My brother and I scammed a guy into letting people out of their contracts early. He was basically enslaving a whole town, Ed said nonchalantly, as he was trying to work out just where they were going to go with all these supplies, and how they were going to move them. He silently cursed their luck that nobody was selling any animals capable of lugging goods around. Brother, huh? You did mention him a couple of times, but I still haven't heard much about the guy, and he already sounds like that kind of dude. You gotta tell me more about your life, man, Toph replied. Seriously, everything I hear about you makes me like you more. You know what? When we find a place to sleep tonight, you're officially entitled to story hour. I'll answer most of the questions that you have, Ed said, very sure to not say all. He knew Toph was very particular about her wording. Everything he knew about Toph made him think it would be a very stupid thing to do, to make her a promise that was too extravagant. The girl was very much one of her word, at least when it came to people she liked. Oh, I am so gonna hold you to that. I have so many questions already. Can't wait to hear how you got your arm replaced like that. Or more about the whole state certification thing. Or your adventures as a dog of the military. Toph was practically salivating over the potential to get as many cool action stories as she could out of Ed. Ed, meanwhile, just stood up. Well, you can hear all about those once we figure out where the hell we're going, and how we're gonna drag 300 pounds worth of stuff that far. I can carry about maybe 100. So, why are we worried? I'll just put it all on the floor and use bending to move it around for us, Toph replied. Great plan. Except for the fact that people chasing us know you're an earthbender. So, you know, they might look where the earth is moving, Ed said. Huh. You actually have a point. We could steal someone's carriage? Toph offered. Nah, leaving these people stranded out in the middle of the woods is a bit much, even if some of them are assholes. If they don't know how to survive out here, this place will take them apart. Trust me, I speak from experience. As Ed spoke, he remembered his teacher's training. Him and Al, almost starving on that island, taught him the very basics of alchemy. He smiled at the memory before shaking that off as quickly as he could. He might have been getting a bit homesick, but he refused to let himself become nostalgic over that hellhole. Speak from experience? Seriously? No, I really can't wait for tonight. There's no way I'm not hearing that. Toph paused as she spoke, clenching her fists. Is something wrong? I think I feel something. Something bad? With our luck, probably. Ed took a deep breath. Alright, I'm not gonna turn around. If I do, then they'll know that I can see something's up. So tell me where they are. I'll make a move before they can, Ed said to her, frustration clear in his tone. These people really didn't give up. Not only that, they were basically becoming his shadows. Please tell me we're not gonna run away again. As much as I'd love to scam more people out of their stuff on the way to wherever we end up next, we have really good stuff right now. Solid stuff that I don't think we can take with us if we're sprinting away at top speed. Not that I don't think you can score up some excellent bland fish or whatever whenever we get to where we're going, but... I agree. There's stuff in there we need. Stuff in there I need. Journals, paper, the stuff I'm gonna need if I'm gonna take notes about this place and sort out my thoughts, which I definitely need to do if I'm gonna get back to my own world anytime this century. So no, we're not going anywhere. Get ready to crack someone's head open, Ed said, clapping his hands together. Just when I thought I couldn't like you more. Thanks for coming with me, Katara, Korra said. They had been walking in the forest for at least an hour or two, but for the most part they hadn't said much to each other. Korra could tell that in the moment all Katara was thinking about were her brother and Aang. She herself wasn't unworried about it, but considering Aang knew his way around the city at least 100 years ago, she figured they'd be fine. He was an Avatar, and Korra did do a good job of keeping herself out of trouble for years on end because she was also an Avatar. It tended to give you a lot of extra firepower to work with. Katara smiled at her. Of course, I wasn't gonna let you just go off on your own, right? I know all this Avatar stuff is starting to get to you a bit. If I'm being honest, it's more than a bit at this point, Korra confirmed. Kyoshi getting in my head was definitely a new one, but at least she was helpful this time, instead of making me go berserk again. Honestly, I'll take anything over her thrusting me into the Avatar state. Plus, I've been doing this whole Avatar thing solo for a while. A long while, actually. I'm just not used to getting help shoved down my throat like that. I get the feeling from you that you're not used to help in general, Katara replied. Honestly, yeah, that's kind of accurate, Korra said, shrugging. But it hasn't been bad having you guys around. I know I'm not really the person to say this kind of thing, but I appreciate you guys helping us with all this Avatar stuff. It means a lot. Of course. Not only are you a fellow Water Tribe member, but you're part of our group. You're a friend, Katara replied enthusiastically. Korra smiled back at her. If she was being honest with herself, she wasn't really used to having friends. At least not a lot of them. The closest thing was probably her conversations with Zuko when she got captured aboard his ship. And she doubted most people would see that relationship as a normal, healthy friendship. Hey, do you mind if I ask you something? Katara's voice snapped Korra out of her musings. Hey, it's only fair. You have followed me around the world, right? Korra replied. You're from the Northern Water Tribe, right? Yeah, I sure am. Born and raised up to a certain point. Right. That's actually kind of what I wanted to ask about. Why did you leave? Especially without finishing your waterbending training. Was it just because you were the Avatar? Katara asked. Korra turned to her. A look of amusement plastered across her face before she realized that Katara really didn't know much about her homeland. Oh, you don't know. I don't know what you think about my home, and I don't really want to burst your bubble or anything if you think it's a haven. What do you mean? Katara asked. Korra looked away. Nothing. I'm just not a fan of some of the codes they have down there. It was easier for me in the Earth Kingdom. That's it. Korra replied. Katara gave the girl a glare that told her immediately not to try and lie with her. They weren't teaching me, okay? Korra finally said. I'm sorry, they weren't teaching the Avatar? Katara asked incredulously. Well, they weren't teaching me any real bending. The only things they tried teaching me about water bending were healing, which I was never any good at, and honestly, which just felt wrong for me to use. I'm a fighter, you know? And anytime I tried to get them to teach me combat waterbending, they were always so hesitant. They complained and complained until I finally broke through to them, and they broke down and taught me the bare minimum. How to push and pull water. They can make tidal waves, Katara. I taught myself more in a day than they did in a year. Korra scratched at her head. She felt like pulling out her hair even recalling those memories. I'm 14 right now. 14. I'm already better than most of their intermediate students, but no. They weren't willing to do it. But why wouldn't they just train you? That doesn't make sense, Katara replied. You're the Avatar. Isn't it their duty? You were basically their weapon to win the war. If they trained you, you could have... The only reason they gave in to my incessant asking was because I'm the Avatar. They were just having a lot of trouble accepting the fact that they would have to train a girl. Wait, what? Katara shouted, grabbing Korra's arm. Yeah, the Northern Water Tribe can be a little backwards. They don't train girls to fight, they're only healers. I guess they just don't think we're strong enough to handle it. Surprise? She said bitterly. She looked at Katara's face, watching her mood drop. You've gotta be kidding me, Katara said, tears pooling around the girl's eyes. You are joking, right? I wouldn't have left for the Earth Kingdom if I was, Korra replied. But that's ridiculous. You're telling me... I was really hoping that... Katara dropped her hands back to her side. You were hoping for a waterbending teacher, right? Korra asked. Katara nodded silently. Sorry. Do you think I could maybe change their mind or something? There's nowhere else left I can learn. I can't just give up. Well, considering that the Avatar couldn't, I wouldn't get your hopes up, Korra said back. I kind of figured that we were going to have to go there eventually. We need to master waterbending. It's not exactly optional. And the best waterbenders in the world live there. But I honestly wasn't looking forward to going back for this exact reason. I think my best bet is hoping that Aang masters waterbending and that he just teaches it to me. But that's... I know. But that's so... I know. You're telling me everyone in the Northern Water Tribe acts that way? Korra covered her ears from Katara's shout, only lowering them now that the girl seemed to be calming down somewhat. If it helps, it's not an entire tribe of people. To be honest, my parents, for the most part, were pretty good. Korra said absent-mindedly. Every memory she had about her parents was positive. Even when she would complain to them about the other waterbenders not taking her seriously, her parents were usually on her side. Her father even tried to figure out certain ways for her to practice on her own, but they were still trying to hold her back. They were still telling her not to do anything reckless, not to rock the boat, and most certainly not try practicing with other elements, especially because there were firebenders around. The Fire Nation constantly poked around the north, constantly poking around for signs of the Avatar's birth. She knew that her parents meant well, but it was honestly suffocating. Well, at least you get to see them again, right? Katara asked, turning to Korra. That's gotta be a positive. I'm sure they miss you. I'm sure they do, which is mostly why I'm definitely not looking forward to it. I'm not excited, a better word would be petrified, Korra replied. Katara looked at her confused. Well, how do I put this? When I left the North Pole when I was little, I knew nobody was gonna let me do it. Girl or not, I'm the Avatar. They would have been stupid to just let me walk away, and at the time I definitely wasn't strong enough to force my way past them, so I just decided not to tell them. Any of them. Including my parents. Wait, so you just walked out? That's horrible? Yeah, I know, Korra replied. Katara fought the urge to nod. She didn't want to judge her, but she couldn't imagine just disappearing on her family like that. Or how worried they would be for her if she did. Before any of them had even met her, Korra was captured by the Fire Nation. If she died, she would have done so without them ever knowing why. Korra stared into Katara's eyes. Her thoughts were clear to the Avatar, without Katara having to say a single one out loud. In my defense, I didn't know what else to do. I wasn't learning waterbending, and there was no chance they were going to help me learn the other elements. I'm the Avatar. Me and Aang are supposed to end the war. My parents were so terrified that a firebender might see me using an element other than water that they were fully on board with forbidding it. And don't get me wrong, I get it, I guess. Say I did learn a few other elements back in the day. I know it could have happened if I wasn't careful with using them. Some firebender might stroll by and see me. Next thing I know, they report that to their bosses, and my entire town's getting raided. It could have been the fall of the Northern Water Tribe if something bad happened. They wanted to be safe, but there's a difference between doing something safely and never doing it. I need to be me. My outlook on being the Avatar is a lot different than Aang's. He was born an airbender. In fact, he's basically a master of airbending. He felt a pull towards that element since he was born. He never even wanted to be the Avatar, he just wanted to keep being an airbender. He wanted to keep living his life. But me? I'm not a master of any element. I never felt any real affinity towards anything, even water. I actually felt a pull towards all of them. It was like it was right there, in my gut, you know? Except for air, I guess. She blew a strand of hair out of her face with a sigh. I needed to pursue that. Not being able to, it felt like I was suffocating. I mean, you have to understand on some level. How would you feel if somebody told you you could never waterbend? Katara thought about it. Waterbending wasn't just a thing she could do, it was part of who she was. Without it, she'd feel almost empty, hollow. I get it, she replied. I don't know how I feel about how you went about things, but I guess I get why. So, what are you gonna do when you see them again? She asked. Korra shook her head. Honestly, no idea. Korra trailed off as she looked ahead of her. Katara followed her eyeline. Together, they saw the back of something. A boy with golden hair. She had never seen anything like it. She looked down at the poster she was given. The details of the boy's clothing were indeed right there. It was definitely the same person who collided with the Fire Nation a few mere days ago. Directly next to the boy, she could see a girl who looked roughly about the same age, clad in Earth Kingdom clothing. They were almost exactly like what she had seen in the vision Kyoshi had shown her. Right down to the way they stood. Wow. Is it weird that seeing them in person is actually kind of creepy? In Kyoshi's mindscape, they just look like statues. I knew they were real people, but they're so alive, Korra said, watching the pair carefully. Picturing something in your head and seeing it right in front of you were two very different things. It was like her imagination had just sprung to life before her eyes. Wow, I've never seen hair like that before, Katara said next to her. She found herself locking eyes on it, unable to tear them away. It was almost mesmerizing the way the golden locks moved through the sunlight. Outside of that, though, she had to admit the boy didn't look particularly impressive. He just looked like a kid, like the rest of them, and a short one at that. It was the same with the girl next to him, honestly. And yet those two were apparently so important that the spirit world itself took notice, like they were vital, like Aang and Korra, like all of their bending masters would be. So, what do we do now? Wait, you're asking me? Korra's voice in the moment dropped to a whisper. It was your vision. Yeah, I know, Korra replied. But it was just a vision. Kyoshi didn't exactly give me a guide to gaining their friendship. Internally, she felt like screaming. Of course Kyoshi wasn't clear. Why would she be? She ended their conversation in the spirit world very abruptly, and she absolutely didn't have steps on how to recruit these two. Was Korra just supposed to go up to them and say, "Hi, I'm one of the Avatars. According to the last Avatar, you are pivotal tools for my journey. Take my hand and let's ride away on a flying bison I know." That sounded stupid at best and conceited at worst. She started rubbing her forehead. Okay, new plan, she searched through her mind. Come on, Korra, you're the Avatar. Introducing yourself to strangers shouldn't be this hard. They'll probably be excited to see you. They don't look Fire Nation. They're probably as desperate for the war to end as you are. Wait, are they looking at us? Katara asked. Korra once again focused her eyesight on the two of them. Neither one of them was facing her, but she did indeed get the impression that they had somehow noticed them. Their movements were slower, more stiff. Oh, great, Korra said. They think we're tailing them. They're being chased by the Fire Nation. What if they think we're Fire Nation? Do we look Fire Nation? Katara asked. If the Fire Nation was trying to be sneaky, would they look Fire Nation? Especially if they were trying to chase someone down who they think is the Avatar, somebody who just got away from them. Korra replied. Katara closed her mouth. No, they would not, she internally realized. Korra took a deep breath. If it was her in that situation, she would have waited for the right moment to create a dust cloud or something and just vanish. And if these two were really halfway as good as Kyoshi had been hyping them up to be, it would be pretty difficult for Korra to find them again if they decided to vanish on her. Okay, Korra muttered to herself. She stood up straight, holding her hands in the air in a surrendering motion. We'll just go out. Show very clearly that we're no threat and that we just want to talk. Katara nodded, putting her hands in the air in the same surrendering motion. The two of them stood side by side with each other as they took their first step. Their first step that was accompanied by the boy with golden hair shouting, All right, now! The boy clapped his hands, placing them below on the ground, and in the next second, in an act of bending Korra had never seen before, the ground erupted in lightning. A large staff with the blade at the end of it shot out of the ground that the boy grabbed, throwing it in their direction. In the same second, the girl next to him stomped her foot on the ground, pushing it forward as a giant rock pillar shot in their direction as well. Korra quickly dove down, trying to dodge the new projectiles going her way, only to realize that they weren't being launched at her. In fact, they seemed to be aimed above her. The pillar made contact with a tree that soon began tilting downward, collapsing into the ground. The metal pole that was launched from the boy's hand made a clinking sound as it collided with something else metal. A knife. A knife had blocked it somehow. As the tree finally landed fully on the ground, the full form of a girl could be seen landing directly next to it. One clad in Fire Nation clothing, two knives clutched in her hands. Well, they're definitely being chased by the Fire Nation, Korra swallowed hard. Great, I knew this was bound to happen. Thanks, Azula, the girl before them said, getting into a fighting stance. Oh great, knife lady, the boy replied tiredly. Korra watched as he narrowed his eyes, the girl to the side of him taking a fighting stance along with him. It was when they turned to face this new opponent that Korra finally got a good look at the boy's eyes. They were just as golden as his hair. It was almost surreal. It confirmed in her head the idea that he was special. And his bending. No, he wasn't a bender, Korra reminded herself. Kyoshi had told her that much. But his power definitely looked like it. Just with much less work. No martial arts motions or routines, just a simple clapping motion. And in that motion, he made something far more complicated than she could with her bending. It's been 2 days! 2 days, lady! The boy shouted. Do you people seriously not have anything better to do with your time? How many times do I have to send you packing? Korra suppressed the urge to laugh. That was how she felt at certain times in her life, when the Fire Nation kept showing up due to rumors of her being the Avatar. It was how she felt on the day that Zuko captured her. Hearing somebody else say it in the moment was almost nostalgic. And to say it so bluntly, without a hint of fear behind his voice, she had a feeling she would get along well with this guy. Do we really have to fight? I was just supposed to be watching you guys, the girl said. Korra watched as her hopefully future earthbending teacher snickered. Then you're really bad at it. You are an incredibly blunt lady. I have to respect that. In fact, I respect it so much that I'm not going to hold back when I send you flying into the mountains. Fine, let's get this over with, the bored-faced girl said, rushing towards them. She wasn't using any bending, so from what both Korra and Katara could tell, she wasn't a firebender. Rather, she seemed to use knives with incredible precision, based on what Katara could see. She managed to scratch both of her opponents almost a dozen times in the first 10 seconds of their fight. The Earthbender was mostly managing to keep her at bay, launching projectiles at her to keep her from getting too close. While their opponent was dodging those projectiles, she maintained hand-to-hand contact with the golden-haired boy. On one of their exchanges of blows, she launched a knife towards him that he seemed to block with his hand. It made a metal clunking sound. Korra's eyes widened. His gloves must have been made of some kind of armor. That was clever. She would have to try a trick like that herself someday. His earthbending partner was doing some tricks that she honestly had never seen before. Her movements were so precise it wasn't hard to tell this girl was in a whole nother league. In one motion, she managed to use her earthbending to spread the distance between the two of them and their opponent apart, all without breaking the tension of the ground. From this new distance, she continued to pelt her opponent with sharp rocks that she had pried out of the floor with her earthbending. Unfortunately for them, the girl they were fighting continued to be able to dodge the projectiles launched her way. Korra closed her eyes, blocking out the scene before her. She needed to think this through. This person they were fighting was clearly dangerous, remarkably so, even without any bending abilities. But the people from her vision were equally skilled, not to mention the fact that there were two of them. They could probably deal with the situation themselves. In fact, she was almost sure they would be fine if she didn't get involved. But did that mean she shouldn't get involved? She didn't know how these people would react to her unsolicited help, and she only had one chance to make a first impression. If it was anybody else, she probably would have been fighting already, but while she was trying to decide, Katara tugged at her shirt. She gestured toward the spot in the forest where shadows were beginning to gather. She could already make out one of them amongst the trees. Someone was definitely there. She could barely grasp that thought when quickly that space exploded into light. The trees in the forest blew apart onto the scene, and from that explosion, a new girl flipped onto the scene. The Earthbender began her assault on her, but not before being struck in the arm, and that single strike was enough to make her arm go completely limp, as though all of the strength had been sucked out of it in a single instance. Oh, uh-oh. Full Metal? I think we might have a problem here, the girl said, backing up to her comrade. He glanced at her, staring intently at the arm dangling by her side. Seemingly, the boy put two and two together pretty quickly, his expression growing serious as he glowered at his new opponent. A problem? I'm not a problem. My name is Ty Lee. Although I guess for you I am a problem, Ty Lee said. Did I do a good job, Zula? As a matter of fact, you did an excellent one. Korra watched as a black-haired girl walked out of the woods, standing beside her new ally. She immediately gave off a different impression than Zuko. Unlike him, who seemed to just be doing it out of a sense of duty, she seemed to take enjoyment in her actions. She looked thrilled at the prospect of making people's days worse. That, combined with the nickname Zula, gave Korra a very good idea of who she was looking at. Zuko talked about the girl quite a few times during their conversations in Korra's confinement. Azula, she realized. Wait, who? Katara whispered next to her. Zuko told me about her when he held me captive. Let's just say she's bad. Very bad. Like worse than Zuko bad. Korra said, watching as the newly formed trio surrounded the duo that she hoped to recruit. I do hope you didn't miss me too much, Avatar. I was looking forward to meeting you on the field of battle again. Not this soon, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose, Azula said. You don't need to worry about that, lady. I never missed you for a second. And at this point, I'm looking forward to burying you in the ground again. Is that so? I do genuinely hope that you aren't disappointed that this won't go as last time did. I tend to learn from my mistakes. As she spoke, a flame began to sputter in the girl's hand. And in that moment, Korra made her move. She jumped out of the forest, and with a single stomp, she managed to launch a rock pillar just large enough to force the girl back. Katara jumped next to her, bending water from her flask at her side, using it to form a spear and launching it towards the unamused-looking girl, who had also taken a step back to protect herself. This distraction did what Korra wanted. She watched as the boy took advantage of this moment, spinning around and kicking his opponent away from him. You didn't tell me you made new friends, an earthbender and a waterbender. You certainly do collect people, don't you? Azula asked, launching a blast of fire towards Korra. Korra, in response, bent water away from a nearby stream, over herself, letting it act as a sheet to block the flame. Oh, two elements, I see. And you move much more traditionally for a bender, so I believe I found the other one. Azula smiled, a grin spreading wide from ear to ear. It looks like we can answer our little dispute. She turned to the boy with golden hair before turning back to Korra. Avatar, is this your other half? She pointed at Ed, her eyes staring at Korra. amusement dripping out of every octave of her voice. Ed stared blankly ahead of him. He was about to reach his limit. First, Knife Lady comes back, then she brings a new person doing flips who managed to partially paralyze one of his friends, and then 2 new people come out of the woods. He barely even registered that Azula was back. He examined Toph's arm. It looked like it was, well, not broken, but definitely swollen, like the blood flow had gotten cut off. Nearly all of it in a single moment. He had never seen anything like that on his world, and it was definitely a problem. Can you still fight? Of course I can still fight. You think losing an arm's gonna stop me? Who do you think you're talking to? She smiled at him with her last words. He could tell that she was still a little concerned, but she wasn't the kind of person who was going to say that, so he just nodded to her. He tried to figure out the quickest way out of this situation. If those 2 strangers were on his side, that could definitely help. Before Ed could make up his mind, he heard Azula shout into the ether. It looks like we can answer our little dispute. Ed's head immediately shot up towards Azula as she continued on. Avatar, is this your other half? Her head faced towards one of the new arrivals. Ed turned towards the girls who had busted out of the forest to their aid. Towards the one with shorter hair specifically, the one Azula directed her question at. Wait a damn minute, Ed pointed at her. You're the Avatar? Oh, one of them, yeah. Have you heard of me? She asked nervously. Heard of you? Oh, I've heard of you, lady. Do you know how much trouble you cause me? Everywhere I go, it's Avatar this and Avatar that, because people keep thinking I'm you. A tick of irritation showed on his veins throbbing in his forehead. I have been chased by these people to the ends of the earth. Oh, sorry? The girl before him replied. Azula watched the scene before her in contemplation. It was said that when the Avatars were united for the first time, they were supposed to recognize each other with some grand eruption of light, and judging from the way they were treating each other, the 2 had clearly just met. Her eyes lit up as she began cackling, drawing everyone's eyes towards her. You really aren't the Avatar, are you, boy? Amazing, that opens up so many possibilities. Are you even a bender? I can't wait to find out. Imagine, I drag you back to the Fire Nation along with one of the Avatars? I can only imagine the glory. Will you shut up already, lady? Ed clapped his hands together, expanding the metal on his forearm into a blade, tearing through the cloth on his gloves with no resistance. Korra's jaw went slack. Did he just bend metal? Forget that, is his arm made of metal? Katara replied next to her. With his new blade acquired, Ed charged directly towards his biggest problem, Azula, the princess of the Fire Nation, swiping at her with his blade arm. In the moments where she was touching the ground, Ed clapped his hands against it, creating giant pits that she nearly fell into. She had to use all of her cunning to keep herself from falling in completely, trapped in a vessel that she couldn't find her way out of. But, in dodging the pit, she continuously found herself on the receiving end of slashes she could barely dodge. Meanwhile, Toph was focusing all of her energy on the one who had debilitated her arm. Unfortunately, due to that arm being out of commission, her bending was limited. Very limited. Her attacks weren't reaching the full lengths that she expected them to. This gave Ty Lee more and more time to dodge out of the way or block. Ty Lee managed to get into an advantageous position at Toph's side, and when she moved in to strike again, something surprised her. A boulder shot itself out of the ground, launching her away. A boulder that surprised Toph too, since she didn't shoot it. She narrowed her eyes at the person who did, one of their new arrivals. You. Nice timing, but that was sloppy, she said. If you used that against any earthbender who knew what they were doing, they would have crushed it into nothing. Heck, if you used that against any bender who knew what they were doing, they would have crushed it. I could have, and I can't even use one of my hands right now. Oh, sorry, I guess? Korra replied. She flinched. She had barely met the girl, and she was already acting like her teacher, and a strict one at that. She was tempted to call it mission accomplished right there. Katara, on the other hand, was focused mainly on the woman who didn't seem to be able to bend. She immediately regretted that decision. This woman was by far the worst person to face in close-quarters combat. Katara was doing everything she could to keep her distance, but it seemed like the girl was just always right on top of her. And even when she did manage to gain some distance, her aim with her knives was deadly accurate. She managed to scratch up Katara's hands every single time she exposed them by moving into her waterbending stance. Azula and Ed's clash continued amongst all the chaos, something that clearly began to annoy both parties. Come now, weren't you going to bury me with those powers again, you freak of nature? Azula asked. She did her absolute best to sound like she was being easy about this whole thing, completely nonplussed, but she had to admit, the appearance of these 2 other idiots definitely threw a wrench in her plans. She had planned on this encounter being later, for one thing. But she also didn't necessarily plan on winning. The last time she faced Ed in a battle, as much as she hated to say it, she lost, and fairly definitively. And she knew if she wanted to not repeat that mistake, she was going to have to avoid getting into a drawn-out fight without a plan. Her next encounter with him was supposed to be information gathering at most. It was supposed to be short, something she could get away from quickly. That was the plan anyway. It definitely wasn't the case now. It didn't help that both of her teammates were busy, easily being kept at bay by his. She managed to sweep herself down, flipping over Ed and using fire to burn his back. He spun around, kicking into her, the flames licking at the leg of his pants. He had made a crucial mistake to her now. His leg was wide open. She breathed deeply, allowing her firebending to surge through her body, as she concentrated a blast as strong as she could directly over his leg. Korra turned to the scene, panic shooting through her body. She should have been there. She should have been on top of him, making sure that nothing happened. Kyoshi told her how important he was, and now nothing, actually. He's not hurt, she muttered. In fact, the only thing damaged was the cloth that clung to his leg. His actual leg continued forward, kicking Azula in the face. The kick partially seared her skin with the heat coming from his metal leg. He has a metal leg, too? Korra realized. Azula groaned in frustration. She remembered his kicks when they first met, feeling like being pelted with a battering ram. She was honestly surprised she didn't put it together sooner. Well, since you've gotten to know so much more about me, Ed began, and since you're clearly never going to stop coming after me, even with knowing that I'm not the damn Avatar, I might as well introduce myself, since I'm sure this isn't the last time I'm going to see your face. As Ed spoke, everybody seemed to draw their eyes towards him, even those in the middle of fights like Korra and Katara. The only person who didn't was Toph. Instead, she just smiled. She had a feeling that whatever came next, it was going to be fun. My full name is Edward Elric, but back home, people tend to know me by a different one. The Full Metal Alchemist. Burn it into your heads. Hey everybody, I just want to say thanks for dropping by to check out another episode of the Avatars and The Alchemist. This has very quickly become one of my favorite series to work on, so I'm glad that it keeps getting good reception. I'm really happy that you guys keep turning out to check it out. I have a lot of plans for the future of this series still, so I hope you guys are still interested in checking that out soon. I really appreciate you being here. In the meantime, if you like this video, please feel free to let me know by leaving a like, and be sure to comment to let me know what you liked about it. Finally, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out on the future of this or any other series that I produce. I've been your captain, and it's been a pleasure to take you on a tour of, not the strongest Earth in the multiverse, but definitely one of the most interesting. Thank you all so much for watching.